Okay, welcome everybody, and to this kind of emergency ROAPE interview, really, with Professor Hakim Adi, who's on the editorial working group and is a long-time friend of ROAPE. Hakim will no doubt tell us more about himself soon, but he is a professor of history and is renowned as the first British scholar of African heritage to be appointed as a professor of history in the UK, and no doubt he'll touch on that. For about, I think, the last 11 years or so, Hakim has been teaching at the University of Chichester, which is in the UK. And until very recently, he'd set up, ran and taught the only course in the UK which teaches the history of the African diaspora in the UK. So a very unique and very important course. And I know that Hakim will touch on that as well. But firstly, before Hakim does let us know what's been going on, I really wanted to say and send the solidarity to Hakim and everybody who's involved in the events at Chichester, because it's important that ROAPE sends this solidarity, and everybody in the editorial working group has asked me to pass that on. I think one of the things that, for me personally, what's interesting is, I've been at the receiving end of a similar situation of where the marketization of education has led to so-called drop in demand for courses. And so the first thing I want to say was really that I know how stressful this can be. I mean, I know you've spoken in other interviews of how inspiring the campaign has been, and I can see that reading the coverage. But I really wanted to begin by asking how you are, Hakim, because I think that's something we sometimes miss out, especially as activists and scholars. We forget to ask each other how we really are and how are you coping.
Well, that's very sweet of you, and thank you to the entire ROAPE family for their good wishes and solidarity and so on. And I think having this interview is, kind of demonstrates that solidarity in action is what's important. I always think, rather than just words. So no, thank you very much for that. Just to correct you on one small point, the course that we ran, the MRes, Masters by Research, is in the history of Africa and the African diaspora. So it's not just the diaspora, it includes the history of Africa. And one of the points we make in the course is that there's not necessarily any separation between the history of Africa and the African diaspora, or they're interlinked, they're interconnected. And we try and stress that interconnectedness, that relationship. But what that means is it allows students to focus on any aspect of the history of Africa and the African diaspora that they wish to focus on. So just to give an example, we have students who focus on Britain. We had a student who focused on the Mfukani in Southern Africa, and is actually now a PhD student doing fieldwork in Southern Africa as a result of doing the MRes. So we include everybody on the course, and it's allowed us also to recruit students from Africa, from the Caribbean, from the US, from Canada, and from Asia as well as Britain. So just to say that. So then in answer to your question, how am I? Well, I mean, I'm a veteran of redundancies. This is my second redundancy. It's all in a day's work to a historian, especially a historian of Africa and the diaspora in Britain, which is always a little bit of a kind of marginalized and ghettoized approach to the subject and to history. But no, it's very difficult. It's a very stressful situation, not just for myself, but particularly for my students. I mean, I have about 10 PhD students. Wow. About half a dozen master students who are literally in a state of limbo. The university hasn't contacted them at all. Wow. They don't know whether I'm coming or going, literally. They don't know whether they're coming or going, literally, because there's been no communication with the university. Some of them are just starting PhDs, some are in the middle of PhDs, some are coming to the end of the MRes program where they'd normally be writing their dissertations. They don't know whether I'm going to be there to supervise them, whether I'm going to be there to mark their dissertations. So it's very difficult, I think, more difficult for the students. Of course, for me, it's kind of disappointing, let me put it this way. When you've been at a university 10 years or more.
Yeah.
In their 11 years, you get used to a certain way of working, you get used to certain colleagues, and then when universities turn around and essentially attack you, your work, your students, your course, call a situation, a few years ago, they would have been, boasting about the course, boasting about how many Black students they had at the university, boasting even about me, excuse me. And now they're turning around and saying the most preposterous things. I was actually in a meeting the other day. This is confidential, of course, because one of the ways in which this operates is everything is in secret. You're not allowed to speak about anything until it's over, until you're redundant, so you can speak. So it's like adding insult to injury. So I was in a meeting the other day. They said to me, this is just to explain to you how one feels.
Yeah.
They said to me, have you thought about crowdfunding? I said, crowdfunding? Yeah, you're looking puzzled. I said, crowdfunding, what is that? They said, well, crowdfunding. They said, they gave me another name. They said, well, you go to the public and you ask for money. I said, okay. I said, well, you what are you saying? You want me to go to the public and ask money to pay for my post? They said, well, that's a possibility. I said, okay, well, I'm not really sure what it involves. Can you give me some of the details of what I need to do? And you're sure you want me to try and find funding for my post? They said, well, I think they realized what they'd been saying. They said, well, maybe not your post, but maybe you could crowdfund for books. I said, okay. I said, well, the MRes is completely online. We don't use any books. So I can't see how that would work. They said, oh, well, maybe not books then, maybe bursaries for students to encourage more students to come. I said, okay, thank you. So you can imagine you're in any part of your career in academia, and somebody comes to you and says you should crowdfund. Is this a new government policy? Is this, that we become, how is it going to make anybody feel? Yeah. It's insulting. It's insulting to me. It's insulting to my students. It's actually insulting to the university.
Yeah.
Somebody should be saying these things. But when you consider it's for a post on the history of Africa and the African diaspora, then it becomes more than insulting.
Yeah.
You're actually into the realms of racism. That's really that's how I took it.
Yeah.
The person who said it may just have been, people say stupid things.
Yeah.
You have to give people, it's not a crime to be stupid.
No.
And to say stupid things. But I think in the context, I think that's how I and other people. So really, you're having that all the time, because what is being said is, okay, the university's having some financial difficulties. So what we're going to do in those financial difficulties, we're going to close down a course. We're going to suspend recruitment to a course that doesn't have as many students as we'd like. Okay. So how does that help the financial situation of the university by students who've enrolled on that course for September told to go home and not come back? How does that improve the situation of the university? Then they say, okay, well, that's not really what we're doing. We're going to use the suspension of that course to make you redundant. Okay. How am I connected with this course that I happen to teach? What is the connection? And then they present, some convoluted connection. I said, well, hang on a minute. I also supervise 10 PhD students. Yeah. What's going to happen to them? Or I've taught other courses. Why am I not being linked to those? Or why anywhere am I linked to this course? Why isn't the director of marketing, who was unable to publicize it and market it to reach the targets that you are setting? Yeah. Why is that post being made redundant, or anybody's? So it's a constant assault on, what it boils down to is an assault on, of course, me as a professor, the course itself, the history of Africa and the African diaspora, and particularly the students, because the students are the ones who really are suffering the most at the moment.
Yeah.
So I think my feelings of concern, whatever stress or high blood pressure or any other symptoms I'm exhibiting, is mainly for my students, of trying to find a solution for them.
Yeah.
And the other problem, of course, I think for the students is that when a university treats you in such a, what should we say, uncaring manner, you don't really want to be a student there.
Yeah.
When they don't tell you what's going on, when they say, okay, well, we're going to sack your professor, who may be the one who's taught you for several years, maybe you came to study with him, then the students think, do I really want to be at this university? Not really. But then what are they going to do? They're in the mid, you know, it creates a very, very difficult situation. And obviously I feel, you know, responsible for my students, want to try and solve the problem, keep emphasizing these things to the university, but it seems that they're completely unconcerned. So yes, it's very, very difficult, very stressful. It's as if everything is on pause. And I should explain that the closure of the MRes occurred in May. Now, I immediately went to ask somebody who was responsible for EDI, people who don't understand that, equality, diversity, and inclusivity, and all this kind of thing, at the university. I went to see him and said, you know, what's going on? This is a course on the history of Africa and the African diaspora. It recruits mainly Black students. It's your, you know, I'm teaching it in whatever position I have. Doesn't it in some way breach all the so-called equality policies of the university, widening participation, all these phrases, doesn't it, you know, and you are the person responsible for all these things. Aren't you concerned? Aren't you going to do something? And he said to me, no. He said, there's nothing I can do and there's nothing I can say. So I said, okay. So then I asked him, well, you know, what's going on? You know, why is all this being done? He said, oh, well, it's a cost-cutting exercise.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was then that I realized that it wasn't really about the course.
Yeah.
It was actually getting rid of me.
Yeah.
But he didn't say, we're going to make you redundant.
Yeah.
Nobody said that. So for about 6 weeks, I actually had annual leave at that time. So I went away to try and relax. But, you know, like my whole holiday was thinking about, okay, what actually is going to happen when I go back? Although no one's told me, it's clear that I'm going to be made redundant. So that obviously creates not an ideal holiday situation. If you're thinking about, you know, all the things that you're trying to do and even what we tried to do with this course, which is to encourage particularly students of African and Caribbean heritage to study history. And in Britain, throughout the sector, this is a problem. There are very, very few students. And we identified that, you know, 8 years ago in the History Matters conference we held. We tried to do something about it. I set up a course, it's successful. We produced 7 PhD students from this course in 5 years, 6 of them at the University of Chichester, 5 of them still there, have come through this course and now doing PhD. So you're thinking about all of this, worried about all of this, as I say, throughout a holiday period, and then you come back and it's, you know, it's in full flow. So yeah, it's very, very stressful, very, very difficult situation, and obviously trying to find a solution to it. Hold on a second, excuse me. So it's a bit quieter now.
Yeah, and I mean, you've raised so much there for us to explore. But I mean, obviously, a lot of things jump out at me, but particularly in terms of you, it's very humble of you to say that, to center this around the students, and all good, I think, you know, academics do that. I mean, there's not a lot of that in the sector, ironically. People are more obsessed with their careers and their publications rather than their students. So I can see how the students are feeling very, very worried about them, because you've built up clearly a very important relationship with them. You answered about the first 10 questions I've got there, which is great. I mean, I was going to ask you to tell me about the course, where it comes from, what makes it unique and what makes the students unique, but you've done that brilliantly. And actually, the other theme I was going to link to, which you've started already, is to use the language of the university managers. You know, I mean, obviously there's a political language you've used very eloquently, but even in their own terms, it's clear that they've actually took complete disregard for many of the things they purport to be caring about. Obviously, equality, diversity, and inclusion. And I just find it incredible, given, you know, the history of Black Lives Matter, the protests that swept the world in 2020, so much noise in universities, including Chichester. And I've read their financial statements for the last year, and emphasis on, you know, making campus welcoming, equality and diversity, broadening access. You know, given the people that come to your course, I mean, what does that say about the university, what they're doing to your course in particular, and you?
Well, it shows that these things are just on paper. In practice, it means nothing. And as I said, when I went to the person responsible for EDI, he said to me, well, I can't say anything and I can't do anything. So if the person who is a senior manager and responsible for these things cannot do anything, where you have a course on the history of Africa and the African diaspora that brings Black students to the university. And we have to remember Chichester, I haven't got the stats in front of me today, is one of the most monocultural, if I can use that expression, universities in the country. You know, it's kind of come to be known around the world, actually, and particularly as a result of now what's happened, because we've been able to establish this kind of cohort of Black postgraduate history students, probably the biggest concentration of, you know, British-based, you know, Black historians in the country. We've managed to do that, and Chichester should be proud of that. And they, as I say, in the past they have boasted about it, but now it's as if, well, it doesn't really matter. You know, that's the impression you get. It doesn't really matter. The students don't really matter. The professor definitely doesn't matter. But more important, even than the students and myself, is the history. That the history doesn't really matter. It's just something we can, you know, we can quietly get rid of it. No one's going to be concerned about it. And I'm very pleased to say that they've got rather a rude awakening, that thousands of people all over the world do care about it and are very concerned about it and are prepared to take action, to sign petitions, to raise money and so on, and to send all the letters of protest and so on. So, but it exposes, I think, the rhetoric of these things. That yes, universities, I mean, in 2020, you know, the University of Chichester also issued its statement. And I again, one doesn't want to say too many things that are confidential as a kind of loyal employee, but it has to be said that the University of Chichester has not a kind of great track record in matters of EDI. I'm not going to say more than that at the moment. Maybe in future one could say more about it. It doesn't have a great track record. It does make a noise. It does have various things on paper, but in practice, it doesn't follow them through. And I think, unfortunately, I have to say that I think in the sector generally, you know, there may be one or two exceptions. There's a lot of talk. You know, people now understand that you have to talk the talk. At least we've got that far. You know, we're 2023. People, post 2020, you know, everybody talks the talk now. It's popular, but actually doing things in practice, putting these policies into practice, actually taking action, backing it up, that's not the case. And I think with a course like this, we said something, you know, a little bit subversive, I think, to the university. We said, well, you have to publicize this course in a way that you wouldn't normally publicize things, because, you know, universities normally put something in their prospectus, they put it on a university website and they say, look, we've done it. There it is. But, you know, if you wanted to study the history of Africa and the African diaspora, what would take you to the prospectus of the University of Chichester? What would take you to the website of the University of Chichester? Nothing would. There's no way you would connect those things normally with the University of Chichester. So unless you go out to people and say, this is what we do, they are not going to come to you. And I mean, that's what we tried to do. I used to go on social media, and some of my students would go on social media, and word of mouth. Yes, we did attract people from all over the world, but that was in spite of the university's publicity machine, not because of it.
Yeah, yeah. So active recruitment and targeted recruitment. I think in the marketing words, it's called segmented recruitment. You know, you look at the target audience and you find particular ways to recruit or to sell to, if you like. It's clearly they've not made that effort. I mean, just so people who don't
know. The irony is, if I can just add, the irony is that the university's managed to achieve greater publicity in the last 3 weeks than it's done in the last 5 years. Isn't that ironic?
Yeah, it is. I'm given the whole thing about management and diversity, and just so people who aren't familiar with Chichester, I looked up the website, and there is the Vice Chancellor's Group, which I think is probably one of the highest decision-making bodies in the university. Is made up of 6 people, 5 men and 1 woman, and they're all white, which I found quite incredible given the statements they've made about diversity. I then looked up the Board of Governors, which is 17 people. Now, it's a lot more diverse because it has 10 men and 7 women on it, but it's 90% white.
Yeah.
What message does that send out to everybody?
Well, it sends out the message that Chichester want to send out, clearly. That's all you can say. I mean, I think these things have been pointed out before. Again, not giving away any secrets, but I can say these things were certainly pointed out 7 years ago. And they've been ignored. They've been ignored, and unfortunately, the recommendations that were made at that time have been, swept under the carpet, and nothing has been done. So, in fact, the opposite has been done, because 7 or 8 years ago, there used to be a special committee at the university, an inclusivity committee that used to sit and discuss various matters of equality and so on. But then that was abolished. So there's not even that in existence. So yeah, I think it's very problematic, and I think what we're seeing now is directly related to a university not really wanting to deal with these policies, and it should. We're in the 21st century. We're in a country in which there are many different people, different backgrounds, different national origins. It's very important, and it's also very important. I was reminded that we're just coming up to the International Day for Remembrance of Slavery and its abolition on August the 23rd, and the UN has made this year in particular a year for essentially transformation through education. That is the theme. This is the UN's theme for all the memorial and commemorative events which relate to slavery and its abolition this year. They emphasize we need particular kinds of history. We need education to deal with these problems of racism and legacy of slavery, colonialism, and so on. This is the UN saying, that's not me. So here you have a course which not only does that, but actually is encouraging, as I say, historians of African and Caribbean heritage in Britain to come into a profession and into an academic discipline in which they are very few of them, and try and transform that discipline. And we've managed to establish it at Chichester, and here it is being attacked. And I think what I would say hurts me the most, as it were, is that we've actually managed to build something there. Okay, maybe it's an unlikely home, but it's a home. We've established something, a center of research, a center of study in this field. We've managed to assemble quite a large number of students of African and Caribbean heritage in this country, and the university just saying, okay, we're just going to smash all that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many years it's been spent building that. It doesn't matter that it's important to people. Because we want more students. Of course, everybody wants more students, but because we want more students, we're going to smash it. And this idea of smashing something when you want more students is just ridiculous. If you want more students, then you promote excellence. You promote what you've got, which is doing a good job, and you maybe you even congratulate the person who's leading it, but no, they do the opposite. They say, well, we're going to sack you because we've suddenly established a target. We never had a target before, but we've now established a target and you haven't quite reached it.
Yeah.
So we're just going to get rid of everything. And you just, to go back to asking how you feel, I mean, it's it's like vandalism. It's like academic vandalism
and political vandalism. And I think, as you called it out, is racism. I mean, listening to you now, there's a clear pattern. We have an excellent course, bringing in lots of Black and Asian students. Shows a real commitment to equality and diversity from you, and in some senses from the university. Yet they're now sort of ending it. You've had committees looking at inclusivity closed down. You've had reports that talk about commitments to equality and diversity, and yet they still close this course down. I mean, it's out and out institutional racism, really, isn't it? It's hard.
Well, I mean, in all the interviews, I've tried to, as I say, as a loyal employee, you try to understand what the university is doing. Okay, what are they doing? Because everybody says to me, it's racist, or they say, they're out to get you, or all these kinds of things people say. And I said, well, no, there's financial shortcomings, and they're trying to, but you cannot really make sense of it just by saying that, okay, there's this problem. I mean, I think to myself, well, okay, why didn't they say that to me 6 months ago? We'd like you to get more students. Said, okay, great. Let's have more students. Why do you need to threaten somebody with redundancy? Is that a new management style? This is okay. Well, you haven't quite, done what we want you to do. Therefore, we're going to threaten you with redundancy. And remember, it's the threat of redundancy unless I can come up with a plan. That's what they say to you. They say, okay, you need to come up with a plan, basically to bring more money into the university, to bring more students to the university. And even if you come up with a plan to do that, if we don't like the plan, we'll sack you.
Yeah.
Now, isn't that bullying?
Yeah.
Isn't that harassment? Isn't that all? This is what it's come to. This is how you manage and I guess you could say, okay, well, I was somebody who maybe I'd been at the university 6 months and I just started, and they said, well, you're not really, you're still on probation. You haven't quite reached our target in 6 months. We're going to let you go. But I've been there 11 years. I'm a professor.
Yeah.
Like you said, I was the first person of African heritage in Britain to become a professor. But they just treat me as if I just started.
Yeah.
I'm on probation. And the whole thing is incredibly insulting. And I think
even on their own terms, it seems puzzling to me, because I can't see how getting rid of you will save them so much money as well. It's not like they're paying you £500,000.
I can assure you, on my salary,
are any other departments being targeted for cuts as well? Or any other?
Well, there are, as I understand it, there are about 20 people across the university. Not all of them academic staff, but I understand it about 20.
Yeah.
I don't know all the details because everything's kept secret.
Yeah, of course.
Fortunately. But that's how I understand it. But I mean, even then, you can't imagine that's you could say that if the one doesn't want to argue this as a trade unionist, but just hypothetically, let's say, if the senior managers would take a little pay cut, that would cover. Well, I'm not arguing. I'm just mathematically arguing that, but of course, as a trade unionist, I wouldn't argue that. But just to put it in proportion, if they took a look, you would save probably the same amount as you would, certainly you'd save much more getting rid of me, and probably you'd save the same amount as getting rid of 20 people.
Yeah.
So there are other ways of, managing crisis. I mean, of course, one has to look at, I guess, why there is an economic crisis in the first place, as far as the university is concerned, and to what extent that is, government underfunding, to what extent it's mismanagement of the university, and of course, we're not well, I'm certainly not privy to all that information, but it's, it's certainly those at the top don't take responsibility for the shortcomings.
That's right, right.
It's other people under attack.
And we know lots of universities, including Chichester, have tried to rapidly expand, lots of capital expending, so they've built up debt. And yeah, you're right, it raises questions of management at senior levels as well. But of course, it's the people from below who are often forced to pay the price, which seems to be happening to you and to the students as well, which is, it's just pretty awful. It raises questions of democracy and accountability for all the liberal ideas in universities, tolerance, free speech, open to alternative ideas. This really, again, sends out a particular message, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's probably the most unfortunate and in a way incredible part of university life, that you're in a community of intellectuals, people who are trained to think and to discuss and to reason and to find solutions to problems, and you're never asked for any input. Yeah. It's one of the most dictatorial employers, I would think, in the country. It must be universities, where half a dozen people, or probably less, make all the decisions. Never involve their employees in any kinds of discussions about anything. Yeah. And I mean, this is a case in point. Nobody came to me and said, would you like to discuss, how we might improve recruitment, or how we might do this, or nobody. Until they were about to sack me. Then they say, oh, well, you need to come up with a plan. Well, why do I need to come up with a plan? I don't think in my contract it says anything about recruiting students or even publicizing courses. I'm a historian. I'm not a marketing expert or so on. Obviously, I do my best. But it's the whole way in which the university, this particular university, is managed, its whole style of management, and it doesn't produce the results that a university should produce, because otherwise it wouldn't be in the state it's in. So it's very, one becomes very concerned about it. And as you say, particularly because we are the ones who are affected. We're doing our job, we're recruiting, we're teaching, we're maintaining, we're keeping students in the university, we're seeing them progress, we're seeing them get PhDs. That's what we're supposed to do. But we're not applauded for that.
Well, importantly, students from, African and Asian heritage, of which they want to try and promote in terms of recruitment and inclusivity. And, so it's not just any students. I think that's important.
No, the students on the course, I would say over the 5 years, 90% of the students, if not more than that, have been of African or Caribbean heritage, or all of them. So, we've done a very good job. I don't think there's any other course at the university who brings in such a high concentration of students of that kind. And so then people begin to wonder, well, so why is it being attacked? Is there some other agenda there? Because you're actually improving all the demographics of the university. You're doing, as you say, all the things the university claims that it wants to do and should be doing. Yeah. But you're attacked for it. You're threatened with the sack. The students are put in a terrible position. They don't know what's going on. You can't make any sense of it at all.
Okay. Look, we've got a couple of minutes left. I just wonder if you could quickly tell us about the amazing campaign and what's happened so far and what people can do.
Sure. Yeah. The students have launched a petition just over 3 weeks ago, and we're asking people to sign that. If people can go to History Matters online, historymatters.online, and they'll find all the information there, or they can go to change.org and just put in my name, and they'll find the petition there. They can also, there's a petition. We've had over 11,000 people have signed that in 3 weeks. There's also a letter, an open letter for academics and kind of history and heritage professionals can sign. And then the third thing that people can do is we're asking, or students are asking people to assist them with fundraising, actually crowdfunding. You could almost say that the university suggested the idea. Students have taken it up in a big way. They're because they have legal representation. They're begun a legal action against the university, but that may become very expensive. So the students need financial support, and also if things go awry and they have to maybe transfer to other universities, they may need, you know, some transitional support. So we're asking people, especially union branches, but in fact any organization, however small or big the donation. But the petition is important to share that, and just the information, just to have more people involved, more people concerned. And yeah, but those are the main ways in which people can give support at the moment. And, you know, we very much welcome any support, anything anyone can do. That would be absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, great. And it certainly is having an impact. I mean, I've seen you and heard you on BBC. It's been in national press, been international press, international websites. I mean, it's brilliant. It clearly shows the support and demand is out there. So it's created.
Yeah. No, it's been great. I was on South African TV. It's been in papers in Nigeria, around and about. Yeah, television here, radio here, documentaries. Obviously, there's been early day motion in Parliament, which was put down, and yeah, in all kinds of.
Covered it as well, haven't they?
Sorry.
US press have covered it as well, I think, haven't they?
Yeah, it's been in some US. I mean, it's certainly been on various podcasts and, you know, YouTube things. I'm not sure if it actually gone in the press yet. It may have done, and I haven't seen it in the US. That's quite possible. If you've seen anything, yeah, do send.
Check that out. Yeah. Okay.
We can put it on the website. That's great.
Okay, brilliant. Well, good luck. Solidarity again from ROAPE and the editorial working committee. And well, I think we'll get you back on in a few months' time and have another chat as well, because I think it's still important to follow this up as well.
Brilliant.
Right.
Yeah. We'll keep going. Many thanks. Brilliant.
Take care of yourself as well, okay?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.